why don't we let's kick it off.
Okay.
Sonny, introduce yourself.
Hi, Sonny Dominguez. I've known you guys for how long?
Oh my gosh.
Five.
Since USC,
USC, yeah.
we have a mutual friend who I met you through, Eduardo.
Yeah, Eduardo.
And
Shout
you
out
were
to Eduardo.
Yeah, miss you, Eduardo. And what do you do? What do you? What are you from LA? And
Born and raised Dallas, Texas. I actually have a religion degree from Baylor University.
I didn't know that.
Yeah? Oh, you didn't know that?
No.
Oh, I thought you did. Yeah.
A degree in religion.
Yeah. I was going to be a pastor or a minister of some sort, but I didn't want to be like in charge of a church. I just wanted to be like a speaker kind of. But then I actually always wanted to be an actor. So I'm an actor, do improv, comedy writing. So that's my passion.
Oh my gosh. Okay, wait. So you gotta let's backtrack for a second.
Okay.
So while you were going through and getting your degree, at what point was the changeover into like, you know what, maybe this isn't, maybe I have to go into acting?
Well, I never wanted. I only got the degree because it was something I was interested in personally, and people said, "Hey, you'd be a good pastor." I'm like, okay, but I had no design to actually ever be a pastor.
Oh, interesting.
But I figured, why not learn about something that I enjoy?
Yeah.
Which is Jesus and religion and Christianity, but other religions too, and look at it from a different perspective as opposed to what just the church tells you. Here you go, believe this stuff, but actually more with critical thinking. So that's what I attribute and like having been able to ask questions without fear of being like, don't ask these questions. It's like, oh no, let's ask these questions. Let's go deep dive into these questions.
Yeah.
So, but then, there's too much church politics and stuff like.
As with anything.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
So that's why I was like, I don't think working at a church is my thing.
Yeah.
I'm a little too rebellious. Somebody said, Sonny, you're a rebel who knows the rules. I'm like, that's a good definition of who I am.
Interesting. So how long have you lived in LA then? This is from Texas.
Yeah. So I've been out here since 2005. And I wait tables.
As you do when you act.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So you're doing your side job as your, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
And as far as acting, what would you love? What kind of roles would you love to play? What are you into?
Comedy, I think. And even though the sitcom has changed, that would be like my ultimate goal. Like I Love Lucy and All in the Family for me are the two pinnacle. Like these are what sitcoms are supposed to be like. Other stuff like, of course, after watching Desperado, I go, man, I'd love to do those kind of movies. So,
yeah.
I'm open to anything, but I think more lightheartedness. I'm not stuff and fun as opposed to like the deep, like soul searching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then and so have you done any parts that that are kind of emblematic of the types that you're like, yes, this is what I want to be doing?
Well, funny enough, the one great thing was Eduardo's project, El Padre. That's where it got my like I can do this, but now I need to hit the gym again. So
don't we all?
Yeah. Well, I'm doing DDP yoga again. I stopped doing it, but now I'm back into it. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's created by professional wrestler Diamond Dallas Page to get guys to do yoga.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Yeah. And then, John, you have a very similar religious upbringing, right? Why don't you introduce yourself?
I was raised in the church, the Protestant church, and but always was drawn to stories and books and movies and music. But I went to school in Baltimore because I grew up in Maryland, did the film program at Towson, and then just kind of lost my way, and then you found me and it was like, come on out to LA.
Yeah.
And I didn't at first. I went to Nashville, and then eventually found my way to LA and dipped my toes in film, decided that I wanted to try the more independent route and not work my way up the studio system as a post PA.
Yeah.
It was a good experience, but
yeah.
So now I work IT during the day, and do film stuff on the side when I'm able.
Yeah. And this is like our first podcast.
Nice.
Officially, after, bless you. And we decided, since we made our trek out to move from LA into the Inland Empire, I have personally found that it was like the best move. We've been out here for like a year, and it's really interesting. I mean, there's definitely a changeover in culture that happens once you move out of LA
Okay.
and into, this area, let's say. And I'm sure the same argument could be made when you're going up into the valley and also when you're going down to like Orange County and things like that. But even just that, what happens is you see a lot of people that are grinding it into the industry in some form or another. And it could be the industry, could be getting into the film industry or TV or entertainment, but they're also the tech industry and things like that.
Right.
There's just a lot of people that are transient that come out to LA, like us, like all of us. Granted, like I lived out here when I was in elementary school just for a couple of years. My dad's from Glendale.
Okay.
But I moved.
Because of the military, right?
No.
Oh.
So I'll backtrack. So I originally born in Arizona, and then 2 months later we moved to Southeast Asia.
Okay.
So my dad was a helicopter pilot, and so all the best jobs were overseas. So, and my mom is from Indonesia. So living in Southeast Asia was kind of like the normal. That was like the thing. But my dad is from Glendale, and he grew up out here, and decided to join the army and all that. All that happened before me. So I lived in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia. Then I moved back here for a couple of years, went to school, and then we moved to Florida. Oh, I'm sorry, moved to Saudi Arabia.
Wow. Okay.
And I lived in Saudi Arabia in elementary school for 3 years. And my dad was flying helicopters from the smaller hospitals to. We lived in Riyadh, which is like the capital, and so I went to an international school there and did that for a few years. Came back to California, and then moved to Florida for a bit. Then I was competing in wushu and in Chinese martial arts. You say professionally, as professionally as you can, because sponsorships were something that was a very very hard to get, because it's not out here in the States, it's not a big sport, but in Asia it's a big sport. So
Okay.
I did manage to get sponsored. And I was able to go to China a couple times and train with the Beijing team and all that. So I traveled. I thought I was going to go into wushu professionally. Then I was like, that's not really a future that I can see myself doing, because I wanted to tell bigger stories, yada yada.
Wushu, is that the one that Jet Li?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So wushu is just martial art in like in Chinese, but the idea is that there's wushu makes up all of the Chinese martial arts.
Okay.
So there's different types of wushu. There's also internal and external, what they call internal and external, like taiji, xingyi, bagua. Those are like the internal arts. So you ever seen the movie The One?
Oh, the Jet Li
Jet Li
movie?
one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So
yeah.
that's actually probably the most aesthetically the easiest way to explain internal versus external martial arts. So there was two versions of him that wound up being the ones that they were fighting against. And actually a friend of mine was one of the stunt doubles, I guess, or the body doubles for him. And so he was doing a style called bagua, which is an internal art, and it's a very like cyclical, based on like the 8 trigram. You move in circles and do all these like movements of like there's lots of cool history and stuff behind it. And then there's xingyi, which is like a very linear, like rooted into the earth, and there's a lot of cool mythology in Chinese martial arts, which is what I loved about it so much. And then and then it shows him versus itself, and the subtext of it is this internal battle, because he's fighting himself. But he's fighting all the versions of himself using internal martial arts. Super cool idea.
So, Kung Fu.
Yes, it is.
Is that a sub? Is that under
wushu?
Well, or is it a different term?
Gong Fu, like a Cantonese Gong Fu, is basically just having a good skill at something. And it became Kung Fu when I would say probably Bruce Lee.
Westernized.
Yeah.
Colloquialism.
Yeah. And it did get related to martial arts because of the world culture of it and Bruce Lee and things like that. But yeah, but so there's a sport of wushu, and then in China the sport of wushu is really big. Actually, Russia, China, and Japan is pretty big. Korea. There's the Pan American Games where they compete big scale. I was actually in China when they announced that China got the Olympics in 2000. When was that? 2002, 2003, or something like that. So for the 2008 Olympics, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was there in Beijing. I have video footage of the whole thing. It was awesome. I was like, oh my gosh, wushu is going to be in Olympics. Maybe I'll be an Olympian. I can represent the U.S. team, and that's where I was heading.
Okay.
And so I was drilling into figuring out that that's what I wanted to do to compete and all that. But then there was lots of things in the background that made it where wushu was not introduced in the Olympics. Because if you think about every host country introduces a new sport.
Okay.
Why is it China didn't? Yeah. So I don't know much about the politics besides the hearsay of it.
Okay.
But the behind the scenes of what China was doing to prepare for it was amazing. Like the training they were doing, where they were having, where, you know, a lot of the wushu performers, they would put rebreathers on them and they would monitor like heart, like they were bringing the science into the art, which was fantastic because the sport of wushu had always been about that. So there's a lot of that stuff I was really leaning into, and that could be a whole other podcast. I could talk about that stuff. So yeah, at the end of the day, wushu wasn't introduced into the Olympics. It became a demonstration art sport. Right.
And I guess that's a question because I think I've seen a lot of wushu, but it's more instead of really combat. Is that correct? It's
not
more
true. There's
Okay.
in the sport of it, there's sanda, which is full contact fighting. You're on a raised platform. You can punch, kick, and throw. And it's like kickboxing with a little bit of like with throwing.
Okay.
There's not a traditional like ground fighting aspect because once you throw, then it becomes almost like judo where you get points for it. You can throw people and kick people off the platform.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. And then there's taolu. Taolu is like the performance side of it. So you think of it as like a gymnastics floor routine. So you have to do a certain amount of things. You have to hit a certain corners, and there's a lot of structure behind a lot of that. Sometimes it used to be where everybody would perform the same compulsory routine, and then you would get judged on all kinds of things.
Right.
But now they've changed it. It's been a few years that I've known. So now they've changed it to where you just have to hit a certain amount of things, and you can do your own routine and all that. Anyway.
But so like in wushu, like if you had an opponent, you more concerned about getting points, or you concerned about like taking them out, like
Depends.
knocking
Two
them out?
different things. So the ones that I gravitated towards the performance art of it. The forms were like, to me it was like it's a performative art.
Right.
You're basically doing this display of telling a story about what a battle was looking like based off of somebody's version, which is why you have things like drunken style, praying mantis. Like nobody's fighting like this, and like I fought like a mantis. Okay, but like what you can do is you're basically like dance. There's modern, there's ballet, there's jazz. Like there's different aesthetic styles to a lot of those things, and that's what makes it super interesting because you're bringing the mythology back into martial arts. It becomes an art form.
Yeah.
I love that. I love the storytelling aspect of it, and it's incredibly physical and demanding. And they learn from everybody. Like when I was training at the Shircha High Sports School, which is like the main sports school in Beijing, they would bring in people, and like there was a whole group of capoeira guys they would bring in. So there was the whole capoeira team they would bring in, and then they would trade movements and things, and like, oh, we can incorporate that into this new thing.
Right.
It's cool, super cool. So yeah, I was massively into that for a bit, and also like thinking, oh, maybe I can be part of a stunt team, or didn't work out that way. I wanted to tell stories. I always did want to tell stories, and so that just wound up being the through line of it. But long story short, I will. So fast forward, did martial arts for a lot of that time, but I was in Florida doing that and traveling a lot. And then I was in the military for a bit, so I lived in Italy for 3 years. I made a movie out there, and
what did you do in the military?
I was a journalist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess we've never had this conversation.
No.
Super interesting. Yeah.
Well, so you are more like Tim Pool than
like Tim Pool.
Yeah. We just need to get you a beanie, man.
Yeah.
You should cosplay as Tim Pool.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a broadcast journalist in the Navy. Okay. And now Navy journalism is not real investigative journalism, we'll say. It's public relations, basically.
Got it.
So I do know some people that became as investigative journalists as you could while in the military. It's very limited billets for that. Most of it is public relations built.
Did any of them disappear?
I have some stories, sure. Like I know a chief that was in, I believe it was in Afghanistan, and he was in a carpool that was supposed to go in one direction. They took him in another direction. It was going right into Taliban territory. Oh yeah, he was like, it was this whole story, and he was like, oh my gosh, I'm probably going to get beheaded. And because that was right around the time that they were publicizing a lot of this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And making, if you're an American, and especially man, if you're an American military journalist, oh man, like you were a prime target.
Yeah.
Luckily, it didn't work out that way because his driver actually was just like, no, they were this way. We're going to go this way instead. Went through the way that they shouldn't have been. And so he was telling me the story about like having to dodge a lot of this stuff just to get to the point of contact of where he was. He was a journalist though. So there's some stories. Now the stuff that I did was mostly public relations. I do spots, which are like glorified commercials for AFN. American Forces Network, and that was basically their version of cable. So they get to watch all of our crappy spots that we all did, which is great. So I'm probably still on TV somewhere in Middle East and Africa and Europe and stuff because they recycle those things. But I did that for 3 years, and on my nights and weekends, I made a movie. This quirky horror movie.
Okay.
And that became my film school. And so it was a full-length feature. Got written up. There's in the newspapers and all that kind of stuff. In Italy, we had a whole premiere.
You still have it?
Oh, yeah.
All right, dude, I'll go watch it later.
Yeah. This was in 2005.
Okay.
Pre-YouTube.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
2005.
Right? Isn't that weird to put it in perspective? Where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, yeah, that was before YouTube.
Yeah.
Before YouTube? What was life?
Yeah. I mean, the thing, before YouTube and all that, there's like AOL.
Yeah.
And like
AOL.
Yeah,
well, I think there was a gap, right?
Yeah, but it was just like the things that were popular then no longer exist. Like, Prodigy was a internet company, and all these internet companies.
Yeah.
What was that? GeoCities? You remember?
Oh, yeah. I had a
What was
GeoCities
the
site.
What was the orange internet provider? It was like a competitor, I think, to AOL. No, not Singular. Maybe it was Singular.
Singular.
It could be also different regions.
Yeah, it's true.
So like, but yeah. Sorry. And
Yeah. So
wait, so I get a question. How did you two? Did you not go to USC?
No. Andrew and I met in Maryland.
Okay.
I still hadn't left home yet. Well, I technically left for like a semester in Nashville and then went home again. I was
John Fulvia, Michael.
Yeah, I was at Anne Arundel Community College before I transferred to Towson, I think, or maybe I just transferred to Towson. I forget which school I was at. One of the two. And I just started at Apple Retail, and we met in Apple Retail Core.
Oh, you guys were you?
Yeah.
worked
So
at?
when I got out of the military, I was in DC and I had a billet that was at the Pentagon, and so that was my last billet. And
What's the billet?
Oh, that's like your job.
Okay.
Like where you're gonna go, like your assignment.
Okay, gotcha.
So I was stationed and to be head of I was the one Navy guy that was head of our department in the combat camera for the Marine Corps.
Okay.
And that was an administrative billet assignment that, and I don't remember why it was there. It's a really unique billet. But because it was an all Marine Corps billet, but I was the only Navy personnel there.
Okay.
So, anyways, I was there, at the Pentagon for a few years and then got out, and then I got the job as like a teacher, a creative is what they call it at Apple.
Okay.
So,
I have a buddy in Dallas who does that.
Yeah, it's fun. It was a good experience. It's a lot of fun. And John and I met there.
Yep. It was middle of a blizzard. Somehow they still called Encore, and I rolled in and Gina Bernetti was playing the Apple Hi-Fi, and I was like, this guy's got a Fallout lunchbox. He seems cool.
Yeah, I had a Fallout lunchbox that I brought in.
Yeah, so I always fascinated. What's first impressions? You guys first met, now that you've had this history of knowing each other for all these years, but can you think back what your first impressions for each other? It's like, Fallout. Okay,
January 2010, so it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the Fallout lunchbox. What hat were you wearing? Was it the Marines hat or
no idea.
No, it wasn't Bad Robot, but he might have had a Bad Robot T-shirt or Rocket Papa T-shirt or something, which is funny for an.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I just remember I was like, oh, he likes stuff. He seems cool, and I just remember like, oh wow, this guy's done some cool stuff. Like, and I remember like connecting like the first day or two of the training, but I think we just ended up chatting over time. We're like, oh, we have enough in common.
Yeah.
And chatting over time, and that kind of spread over into once we started working at the store like officially. Because I think the training was like 3 days, 5
Yeah, I
days,
believe
something
so.
like that.
Yeah, I was like,
And I just remember it was like in the middle of, like a blizzard was receding from, I think the first day maybe was canceled, or a few days after that was canceled because of the snow. East Coast problems.
oh man.
Because
But yeah.
for me, I always like especially loving comic books, fandom,
Yeah.
movies. When you meet somebody that likes the same thing you do, there's a special bond that's created.
Oh, of course.
And like,
Yeah.
like, you can say it's beyond just a generic like, hey, oh, I like these movies or whatever. But like, oh yeah, if you know the deep cuts, and then you see somebody else that likes the deep cuts, you're like, friendship.
Yeah.
Oh, do we just become best friends? You
Yeah,
know?
it's like the Care Bears. It's
Yeah.
like,
I remember-
Cheers!
I'm trying to remember moments. I mean, I feel like we had already hit it off pretty well, but I feel like a key one was 2011.
Yeah.
About probably like, I think it was like New Year's 2000. So we'd known each other for literally like a year. And you're like, hey, me and my friend Steve are going to go get Korean barbecue for New Year's. And I was like, I've been wanting to get Korean barbecue for, I think it was like, I remember like 2008.
You'd never had it.
I never had it. And I
Yeah.
remember seeing a news thing in Maryland about some Northern Virginia Korean barbecue. And I was like, ooh, the beef tongue looks really good. I want to try that. And it had been on my list for, I remember it being like circa 2008. So about 3-4 years. And I was like, yes, I'm down. And it was like one of the best New Year's Eves ever.
Oh, so good. And it was snowing, so it was just like, crisp. We got really drunk off of soju.
Oh.
Came
And
back.
then
Yeah.
Was it Steve or you that started singing
Oh,
the
it was
song?
my song. Yeah, I had some
2011.
Yeah.
I had some 2011 song I was like making up on the
Just
fly.
kept
Oh,
like
yeah.
repeating. It
That's
was
great.
very funny.
Yeah, had to be there.
Had to be there.
The reason I bring that up because that's how me and Eduardo, how we knew each other,
Yeah.
met. Because I auditioned for his project El Padre, and then we were just talking and Robert Rodriguez and like throwing things out, and I could see like, okay, about Chayon Fat, about this cool stuff, and I knew about wrestling, and he knew about wrestling, so we're like, okay, this is connecting. And then I remember when I first met y'all at that house that you lived in off of USC.
The Purple House.
Yeah.
That's what we called it. Yeah.
Didn't it get demolished afterwards?
I don't
No,
know.
I think
Someone
it-
bought it.
yeah, and they
The owner
renovated it.
had
Okay.
chance. So you met Andrew before I moved out here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Briefly.
Okay.
Briefly.
Yeah.
We
So
I
like
couldn't remember.
passed by because when we were doing that project, we were all so busy running
Yeah.
around trying to get all our stuff done. So I remember meeting
Oh,
you.
was a Padre a USC thing?
Yes.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
his one of his.
Final things?
No,
right?
they called it 310. So
Okay.
it's basically the mid project, but it really is like your unique project you're supposed to do within 5 minutes with a lot of constraints. So yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that about Eduardo. We're going to sit here and talk about Eduardo.
Yes.
So orientation day.
Miss you, Eduardo.
Yeah, orientation day. Eduardo and I meet,
Uh-huh.
right? And so I sit down in our group or whatever, and it was just me, him, and a few others of ours, and like, so I was like, man, so I just saw Sam Raimi, and I did.
Wow.
Sam Raimi was ahead of me with his son, checking his son in.
Wow. Okay.
And I was like, oh my God, that's Sam Raimi.
Uh-huh.
And so I was telling our group that, and I was like, yeah, I just saw Sam Raimi. And most everybody goes, who's Sam Raimi?
Oh wow.
And then I was like, this is the film table, right?
Yeah.
This is
You guys
this is
all
a
got
bad omen.
accepted, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was like,
Yeah.
what am I? And then Eduardo was like, did Evil Dead. He did. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then so he had this like
Talking shit.
snarky, yeah, he had
Yeah.
this kind of snarky attitude or whatever. We go on our little tour or whatever, and that's the same thing. It was like, you can tell because he was like, he's like, yeah, like RoboCop, and I was like, what do you know about RoboCop? He's like, what do you know about RoboCop? And then I was like, oh yeah, well, and then we started like one-upping each other.
Yeah.
And you tell like that's that same thing you're talking about where it's like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, finally, like we're aligned on all those things,
Yeah.
those things that we love, like John Woo, Chai and Fat, like huge part of my childhood.
Oh yeah.
And Ringo Lam and like all the Hong Kong cinema was a huge part. Also like just weird subversive movies in cinema, like everything from like 80s and 90s. I was just like all about. RoboCop was the reason why I wanted to get into movies.
Okay.
Yeah, so like
So that's your gateway.
well, I mean, there's many gateways. There's
Okay.
two things. It was like one of them was Scream Greats, which was this Fangoria documentary.
Okay.
And I didn't know that it was a documentary when I got it. So the short story of this is when I lived in Saudi Arabia, we would come back to the States, And out here, there's a place called Ken Crane's. It was called Ken. I don't know if they're around. Ken Crane's Laserdisc Emporium.
Laserdisc. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think they're
Laserdisc.
around anymore.
No, they're not Laserdisc.
It
Right?
may have come and gone and come back.
Right. Yeah. So my dad would be like, "Hey, choose a couple movies or
Okay.
whatever." He would choose a couple movies, and I saw the cover of this, and I still have the VHS of this, and the cover's amazing. It's got like what I didn't know is Tom Savini's face, and it's surrounded by monsters.
Okay.
And I was like, I gotta get this.
Yeah.
So I gave my dad the sales pitch. I was like, oh yeah, I've seen this movie. This is like, he's got, hadn't seen it. Brought it back. I went all the way back to Saudi Arabia, played this thing, and it's a documentary. And I'm like, what is this? And it's a
Okay.
movie about making movies, special effects. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's a thing. 8 years old.
Right.
So we watched RoboCop one day, and we do this with a few other movies, but he paused it right on the point when he gets his arm blown up, right? And on Laserdisc, it's crisp. So he pauses it, and it's like crystal clear. And he's, backtracking and forward tracking frame by frame.
Right.
And he's like, how do you think they did this? And I go, what do you mean? And we just started talking about it like that. And then it just solidified, like, not only like movies are made, right? And it's made by really creative people it's magic, it's illusion.
Right.
And it's just like that, those things in my brain, you can tell, like, they just, connected dots. And I was like, wanting to write stories and do all that stuff. And it was also, at the time, it's really influential when you're, like, wanting to play. You're wanting to make things up and things like that. So,
That's awesome.
yeah, it was a huge part of it. Paul Verhoeven, there's just so much. So, anyways, go back to, meeting Eduardo. It was like breath of fresh air. Of course, we became, like, instant best friends, hanging out, like, talking movies and stuff like that. And it became that same thing. And what's really weird is that you would think in LA there would be, and I'm sure there are, massive amounts of nerds.
Right.
It's hard to find.
Well, I will tell you, especially as an actor, the things I like and the conversation I like to have, a lot of actors don't like having those conversations.
That's bizarre.
Yeah, because either they are fans, but I have a friend who's a working actor. He goes, Sonny, you think about movies a little bit too deep. And I'm like, what? That's the whole point of movies, is to talk about what do you think the director meant or the writer wanted, and how the story and all that. They're like, it's just a movie, dude. I'm like, no, it's not just a movie. I mean, granted, there's the popcorn films that are purposely designed that way, but there's other films that aren't. That are supposed to make you think and make you wonder, okay, and like I just saw 2 movies that I literally left going, what the fuck? One was Men.
Oh,
the
I haven't
Alex
seen
Garland movie.
Yeah.
And the other one is Crimes of the Future.
Oh, both movies I want to see.
And I just walked away going, I'm going to have to watch YouTube videos to explain the movie to me because I don't get it.
Yeah.
But
well, that's the thing about, it's interesting because you take the idea and about movies. Movies are like, that's the shared dream, right? That's the thing that everybody experiences in a safe place without experiencing it. So it's this illusion of memory. Everybody comes out of it with a certain experience. Usually what breaks the illusion is when, you see how it's made, right? You see the green screen, like, it's done, it's fake. When you watch enough of them, you kind of look beyond it sometimes, hopefully. And I think a lot of creators usually, and especially like when you listen to like Tarantino interviews and things like that, he's really good about going, like, just layering it, and he can explain. He goes, you know what, I love the way they did this part of it, and he kind of like, some of the things you have to let go because they're made by a committee of people, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When it works, it's brilliant. And that's the cool thing about movies. Now we have video games, and those are a different type of shared experience.
Right.
But it is still a shared experience. But the only problem is that you have those in isolation usually, and that's why video games really can't be movies. And everybody thinks that movies are going to go away. And you and I have had this conversation where it's like we've had this debate about where our movie theater is going away.
I don't think so.
Well, I kind of do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm in the middle of, I think there'll be less, but there'll still be a lot of them.
Now, when you mean as far as to see like even bigger productions, like the Marvel movies and all that, they're going to scale back and no more AMC? I mean, that's going to suck for you and me because...
No, I'm also.
Okay.
Yeah. But no. What I mean by they're not going to go away. I think we're going to have
the megaplex will be culled.
yeah.
They'll still be your new Beverleys and your
Okay.
well, it's the
I hope this is a
the
hope
Draft House.
actually.
Yeah. I feel pretty confident. I mean,
Yeah.
the resurgence post COVID again. I think that will die down eventually, but I think there will always be people who want to go see movies with a bunch of other strangers and have that shared experience because they're nerds
Yeah.
like us.
Yeah.
I mean, I have the AMC A list, and that's like for me, it's especially being a religion major. What I'm about to say is going to be blasphemous, but I
I
apologize.
have one in my pocket too. So.
But going to the movies is like going to church for me
Yeah.
because I'm going there to listen to an experience a story that I don't know about. Maybe it's whether it's social issues or a creative idea or whatever, and being introduced. And I'm going, okay, is this resonating or doesn't? Okay, if it doesn't, okay, that was fun. Okay, but when the movies do resonate, your mind changes.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's why for me, I hope movies theater never go away because it's almost a sacred place
Yeah.
for movie fans to go.
Yeah, it's
What
like
do
a
you-
single focus of meditation.
Yeah.
Well, this is
I would say what you said was my ADHD brain, like
Yeah.
tying a bow on the whole conversation.
Yeah.
But what you said about the movies of the shared dream, it just reminds me of the line, I think David Lynch's line from Twin Peaks: The Return, is "We live inside a dream, but who's the dreamer?" And that made my brain, my ADHD brain, think about. And I've heard this, so many people say it, but going back to my upbringing and specifically Christianity, but religion in general. Dorothy Sayers, who was like, I guess, if I remember correctly, was friends with like C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. I think I can't remember if she was in the Inklings or if she was just kind of like adjacent. But she's written some of my favorite like detective novel series. But she also wrote a book, if I remember correctly, called "The Dogma is the Drama," and the whole idea is like history is God's story that He's telling. Like the redemptive arc of human history is the biggest story that we're actually living through. And so that was an interesting concept, and it always made religion a little bit more interesting to me because I'm like, I like stories, and you're telling me that the big man upstairs is the ultimate storyteller. That's a little bit more appealing than some dusty like, well,
Sure.
you have to blah blah blah.
yeah.
I just thought that was cool.
Yeah, I'm not personally incredibly religious, but I am fascinated by the mythology of religion.
Yeah.
That's not to say that fake or real or whatever. Who knows? None of us know.
Yeah.
But the mythology to me is the most important part. This is that Joseph Campbell influence of it, where it's like we've all had a shared learned experience of living in the world. Why is it we're only focused on this segment?
Right.
Why aren't we listening to other segments and learning from that as well? We can all learn. Like
Right.
there's no shortage of learning. And you can take those experiences and, sometimes they're so foreign that you'll never get it. But that's also part of being human and figuring out like the world is so vast and so amazing. This is where movies come in, actually. And like I love the push of the diversity in storytelling. Without getting into the political side of it, it's really interesting when you start allowing the democratization of movies, where you can put cameras in more hands. Now more
Right.
people can tell unique stories. That's a good thing. And then more people will be able to get better with visual effects and things like that, so they can tell their bigger stories in their own custom worlds and things like that. We're all heading towards that. So going back to like movies or movie theaters are going away, I feel like movie theaters are going to be scaled back because it's just not sustainable the way it is right now. But I think the bigger thing is that more movies will be made. Like we're already heading in that direction with streaming, but like the long tail of movies, it's basically that there are more things and more niche audiences that will be created.
Right.
There's always going to be some form of, like corporatization of the movie part of it, right? Where the studios are going to do whatever they're going to do. I'm sure that's probably going to be around. But what happens when, all three of us can open up our own micro studios? What does that do? And we're not going to get. Why would we need to get our movies into movie theaters when the internet is going to be even richer than it is now in the experience of it? like Web3 and things like that, and for in AR and VR, everybody's going to have that, unique thing. But what's going to tie it all together? So I think more so you're going to see people get together, like staying where they are, but get together online and share those experiences in real time.
Oh, see, I kind of have a disagreement with that because take, for instance, the new Batman movie, right? I know friends that waited till it was on streaming to watch it. I'm like, you don't understand. You have to watch that movie in the theater.
Yeah.
For the number one purpose, your sound.
Yeah.
The sound in that movie made the movie, especially with how he was moving, how he was walking, and particularly when the Batmobile turned on.
Oh, well,
And
you're talking about the fidelity of it.
Yeah.
I'm saying that that's going to be better for everybody. Like, look, we have a theater in the house, right? And I'm very tuned into wanting to have that experience.
Yeah.
So fidelity aside, the technology of that,
Right.
I'm saying, like, okay, so movie theaters, like, I'm sure every community will probably have their one movie theater that everybody goes to.
Yeah.
But I think the majority of it, and it's already happening with streaming and things, the majority of the content of things are going to be distributed.
Right.
TVs are better and cheaper. And
Yeah.
but his counter argument when I make the argument you're making,
Yeah.
and he's got a point, is TVs get better and cheaper, projectors get better and cheaper, surround sound gets better and cheaper, but also VR.
Oh, yeah.
If you put a 2 OLED high res, you can't tell the pixels anymore.
Okay.
You might as well be, and then you can be in a movie theater virtually with your friends.
And
that are on the other side of
everybody
the planet.
has front row wherever they want.
Right.
Have you ever tried watching, now right now, the experience, like big screen and stuff like that? Have you ever tried that in VR?
No.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
I would love to see what you would think of it.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Yeah.
I guess one of the parts is like when the Batmobile started, right? Going back to that point.
Yeah.
The whole audience went, yeah, and it was just that kind of almost like I'm not the only one.
course.
Other people just got turned on
Yeah.
the same way I
Yeah.
did right now. This is awesome. I'm with a group full of people who are loving this movie like I am. Or Avengers Endgame, when Mjolnir comes into Captain America's hands. And the whole, I literally jumped out of my seat.
I love it.
I couldn't help it.
Yeah.
I've only jumped out of my seat in 2 movies ever in my life. And the
Yeah.
other one was Wind River. Have you seen Wind River?
No.
Okay. It's written by Tyler Sheridan.
Oh.
But there's a scene, because I was just so like,
Yeah.
the bad guys were winning. I didn't like this. And then something happened, and they got taken down. And I literally went, yes! And I felt bad because I don't like to ruin the movie experience.
But you were in it.
I had to let it out.
Yeah.
But when you hear other people respond, it kind of validates.
Sure.
You know, like, okay. Kind of like when you're going to a church. Like,
Yeah.
you hear a word and you needed it, and then
Yeah.
somebody, amen, brother.
Yeah.
You're just like, okay, I don't feel alone.
I had that experience in Top Gun.
Okay. Then you won.
I was in tears beginning to end, and I don't cry in movies.
Okay.
A lot of things hit me
Right.
for that movie. And also, like, I saw the original in the theater.
Okay.
Had a long conversation with Jack Epps when I was at SC, like about Navy, about motorcycle riding, about American culture and things
Who's
like
Jack
that.
Epps?
He created
screenwriter.
one of the
Okay.
created Top Gun.
Okay.
Yeah.
First one.
And then it was interesting because we saw it on Memorial Day, and there was just a lot of like flashbacks of military life and camaraderie.
Right.
And then we saw there was a bunch of veterans in the audience, and they were all clapping, and like it was so like, I was moved.
Right.
And I was moved because of the audience. I think if I would have seen that movie by myself, it would have been great. I
Right.
don't know that I would have had the same, initial experience of it. Maybe I would have, because a lot of other things hit me. It just all was overwhelming. But and then the same argument could be made if let's say I were to see that movie. Have you seen it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I saw it twice. I loved it.
I know. So like, I think you could say, okay, the story is like Star Wars. Basically, it's like whatever. Yes, you can drill it down to its like most minimalist thing. You can do that with any story, really.
Right.
That's not what makes it great. That's not why it made $800 million worldwide, at the box office. Like there is a sense of that culture that it just knew to dial into, and it needed to be in a shared experience. That was exactly what a theatrical experience should be. It should be a shared experience of shared interests and culture and values that is not partisan and all of those things. That's beautiful, like on so many levels, because we need it.
Right.
And yeah, I think that is one of those things. I don't want to see movie theaters go away. That's not my argument.
Right.
My argument is just like it's all cyclical. Like I think there's going to be a time, when the theaters it's just way overhead.
Yeah.
so much stuff that they have to account for. They have to change, and things like Alamo Drafthouse is great because they change it a little bit, and also they as far as I know, the ones in Austin. You've been to the ones in Austin, right? You're from Texas.
I'm from Dallas, so.
Or do they have an Alamo in Dallas, right?
Yeah, I haven't been yet to an Alamo Drafthouse. I've been
at all?
No.
I've never been.
What?
There's one in Maryland now, or Virginia, I think, but I've.
Oh, well.
Isn't there supposed to be one in LA?
Here's
but they
the
never
interesting.
built it or something?
Yeah, there is one in downtown, I think.
They finally built
okay.
it. Yeah.
So Alamo Drafthouse in Austin is great because like you'll go in there and they'll show like short films by local community people
Right.
before the movie. That's awesome.
Would you say it's the decentralized movie theater experience?
I mean, that's what I
Pretty
think
much.
it's going to be, right?
They'll
So
be more and more niche. So
yeah.
instead of seeing Top Gun, for instance, with people who are just like chasing babies in the aisle and people are just like
Yeah.
on their cell phone, it's going to be everyone's there because they want to see that thing.
Yeah.
So you'll probably
Like
get
a
more.
concert.
You'll probably get more of that experience that you had from Top Gun.
Yeah.
The more niche things get, because I mean, I even in Baltimore in 2013, I think I saw they had a series. Some of the local semi-well-known artists had a series called Gunky's Basement, and it was like them playing their favorite movies on film. So I saw Die Hard, Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me, I think one other thing, and then when I saw Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me, it was like, hey, they did little intro, introducing it. And they're like, who here has never seen it? And like 2 people raised their hand, and they're like, buckle up.
Buckle up.
But it was interesting because like, everyone in there was there because they knew what they were getting into, and there was like crowd response, but it wasn't, the annoying, the downsides of going to a megaplex where like, we randomly bought our 5-year-old to this rated R film because it's just that sort of thing will be less and less, I think. So.
Yeah, I think the idea of, getting out of the house, you do the check boxes of what movie theaters, it's a couple-hour getaway, it's escapism, some people, blah, blah, blah. You can dial in all those things. There's lots of things that we can do to do that.
Right.
How can they change movie theaters to make them exciting? And yes, make better movies, for one thing, and, make more of them so that they go into theaters. But, like, streaming, I think as much as they're going to try to, especially with Netflix getting hit and things like that, and like, I think what it feels like the changing is we're all trying to figure it out, and there's a battle between the mass distribution and the decentralized distribution. Decentralization is always going to win.
Right.
Like in the long run, decentralization wins. The internet won, right? And there's a battle of centralizing it in a lot of ways, but I think my hope and also just seeing how things go is that when you start to allow more people to take responsibility of themselves and doing and their part in it, we'll get there. And then we'll get there in a beautiful way because other things will be invented to help bring that community together, and people will holistically do it. And maybe this is the libertarian in me, but it's like, these smaller communities and bringing people together in their own communities rather than it being like in mass and large. I think we're going to come back to community-focused events and movies and things like that where people can do that. And crypto might play a part in that. NFTs might play a part in that. VR and AR might play a part in that. If they, if certain things wind up being social, like you go like social media, we're in social media 2.0 or whatever. Like when we go to social media 3 and Web 3, you're going to start seeing, I think, more like meetup groups. And yet they don't have to be like in person. Like, okay, here's a good example. Trying to find nerds in LA. We're everywhere.
Yeah.
How do we all meet up? And it's weird because you're not just going to go, hey, are you into this? It's not like that. But if you find a way that brings everybody together in an interesting way, people will start to then meet in those ways. And maybe there need to be safer ways because you're dealing with women, men, and all kinds of ages. Who knows?
Yeah.
You do it in a way that's like in some type of AR or VR. Maybe that's a way in. Maybe those communities strengthen because you start doing things like these podcasts. Everybody's doing podcasts now.
Yeah.
What is the need for that? Podcasts are a really great example of this. The fact that we set up a couple of cameras, some basic lights and mics, and we're sitting here nerding out over stuff, having conversations we normally would, but we're going to put it online. There's a need to put that stuff in front of other people. I think it's like it's an act of saying, hey, like find our community. Let's all like, that's what it is, right? And once you do that, it's a strong thing. And it's a yes and. Right? You can be a fan of this, and this, and everybody can be a fan of all those things. And It's not a competition. There's no competition in this field. That's what makes it beautiful.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
That's a beautiful
And I think-
decentralization.
I think for me, like when I look at my podcast / YouTube habits, like obviously there's certain segments of that are like, I want to learn about this or learn more about this other thing. But there's some of it I just watch because it's comfort viewing, basically.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, in terms of starting some of my own stuff, I'm like, what's the point? It's oversaturated. But then I realized I watch like 3 to 5 channels that effectively cover the same material. But I think maybe it's in an age of hypercritical, polarizing stuff. I like hearing 5 different people's positive or mostly positive opinions about a thing I love because they're all actually different and they'll bring their personal experience in, and I'm like, yeah, it's not hearing the same thing over and over again. It is, if you drill down to it, yes, but like with movies, it's like, well, there's only so many plot structures you can do. It's how the details of it. So I think that's another interesting, the whole side of hearing different positive takes in an era of like hypercritical, hyperpolarized.
Headlines, and I hope this kind of goes away, but the monetization of things that happen online is by really crazy headlines. That's what gets the clicks, right? We went from not too long ago, we had the BuzzFeed, 10 things about this, 10 ways of, the lists. And that list, went to, and then, the headlines in politics. And this is cash for like all of these companies. It was until now we're all just sick of it.
Yeah.
Those are like the ebbs and flows. I think we're going to work our way towards what is the natural thing that we're all into. We know we can all make a living at. I know everybody has to figure out a way to monetize so they can keep it going and concentrate and be able to do more of these types of things. And I think that's the way in is possibly through some type of my thing is I think crypto and blockchain is the way in to that. I think it's inevitable. I don't know of another technology that's this far ahead and just ready to open that door. There's the financial side of it, and that's a whole other thing because who knows? Like finances, especially on the global side, is all about power and money, and it's a real estate business, But like the technology behind blockchain of being able to track certain things and metadata that's really smart and very secure. I think once we get to that point, that is going to open up ways for everybody to be able to do these things and be able to monetize throughout the chain of the life of whatever projects that you're doing. And that's where we're going to get to like true decentralization. Now, are the hiccups and all the kinds of stuff? Sure. So going back now to the movie theater, how does that get taken away? You're going to start to see when more people, let's say this podcast finds its audience, becomes a thing, and we've had talks about certain things that we want to create, right? And that's not necessarily a movie theater. It's a movie. It could be a theater experience built into something else. So that's where I think I would like to see more of those types of things, and then that becomes the movie theater plus. It's like that is part of the experience of whatever it is, because you want to get people to get out of their environment into something that is more community based.
Right.
And I think sitting in front of a screen for 2 hours is part of something, but it doesn't have to be the only thing. Right.
Right.
I think more people will catch on to that. So.
And also, I think for me, I'm weird because I'm a single guy, no responsibility, and I have an AMC movie pass. So I'm only spending like $25 a month. So going down to the theater to go see a movie is really convenient for me, as opposed to somebody who has work schedules, family issues, other things that they have to fit their day around, and if they have babysitting, that's an additional cost, and then like all these costs. But me, I'm just like, I walk into the theater, cool, had an edible, cool, excellent, walk out, cool.
Yeah.
But then some people are like, oh, I wish I could do that, but you don't understand my life. I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. And I also like the solitude of going to the theater by myself. If there's nobody in the movie, I have this huge screen, I have great surround sound, and there's nobody to distract me.
Yeah.
Because at home, if I'm watching something, whether it's streaming or DVD, I need to go do this, pause, or just let it play, and I miss scenes in the movie or in this show.
But you could, if you're in a movie theater and you really got to pee.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's usually the-
That's why I kind of plan. I kind of know my bladder,
Yeah.
you know, about at that point. So
Yeah. Well, yes, I think it would be interesting. And we're very close to these display technologies that are going to be like what Apple is going to come out with, or like 8K, HDR, and Sony is already doing that with their new PlayStation VR 2. It's going to be, I believe, it's an OLED panel that
Okay.
is going to be HDR. So imagine that type of experience in virtual reality. That's going to be pretty mind blowing. And if you can make it, if you can then watch a screen in 4K or even 2K, and you can make it as big or as small as you want, and then you have really great sound, that's going to take away all that experience of like, why do I need to go to the movie theater? Really, you're only going to need to go to the movie theater because you are going to you want the community experience, you get out of the house, but you're trying to go because you don't have the big screen.
right.
And then if you have the big screen that's in your eyeballs,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I get your point because I just noticed I gave two things that I like the shared experience, and sometimes I like being the only person in the theater. So it's like I don't want to say it's contradictory, but it's just funny. Like,
Yeah.
And you bring up a
Depends
great
on
point that if I had this stuff available to me like that at home, would I even need to? Especially
Right.
with gas being it is what it is right now.
Yeah.
Driving in a theater when I can just like be at home.
Now I've been to some theater experiences that take me out of the experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's been like that the past few times. Before Top Gun, there was a few movies we went to, and there were people kicking the seats, or there were people like talking through the movie or making out. There was a couple. We went to go see.
Loudly making out.
Yeah, we went to go see the last James Bond movie,
Uh-huh.
and they were like, you can hear them like, and then they're like slapping, like swapping spit, like
Yeah.
throughout the whole thing. And I was just like, man, like
Yeah.
I paid for this, like.
Yeah.
So, and what are you gonna do? Like everybody's, you could be the rude person, or they're the rude people,
Yeah.
but you could be the one that's just like, stop it.
Person.
Yeah.
But then then that completely takes it out because everybody.
Yeah.
So it's a whole thing. Anyways, on top of that, some of the tuning that they do in the movie theaters, once you have your own system, you don't need to spend a lot on it. Once you have your own system and you're tuning it, then you start figuring out what works for you.
Mhm.
And then it becomes like your temple at home.
Yeah.
Not a hard thing to do. But when if you don't have the space, which of course, and you've got glasses to do that, yeah, forget about it. That's going to be everything.
Yeah.
It's so funny, like, you think about, like, everybody was like, first we went to, like, the movie theater with a big screen, and then we have the TV experience, and then we have the phone, and people are watching. I'll watch stuff on my phone, especially if it sounds really good. Like AirPods, I could put on that, noise cancel, and get spatial audio. I'm good,
Wow.
because you're in it, And then going from the phone then to glasses, like, of course, that's the next thing.
Yeah, I'm still definitely, and I'm curious what the science will be in the long run with, like, someone who's pretty freaking blind, with eyesight and the headsets and stuff. I'm sure they'll have more science, but also they'll fix whatever issues to come along. But
Yeah.
I'm very much team. I love my VR headset, but even if it was crystal clear for movies, if I could come downstairs and watch it on the projector, I'd probably still do that just for it's easier on my eyes. Blah blah blah. But I mean, I like having both. Options are nice.
Well, VR is still early.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing. So they're studying how eye strain and things like that. That's the kind of stuff they'll figure out, and then they got to work it into the design of it because you got this big old thing on your face. Like right now, the Oculus 2, the Quest 2 is basically a cell phone on your face, right? There's still a top heavy thing, but now they're making it glasses. So like if you can wear glasses like these that kind of wrap around, then maybe that strain won't be there, and maybe they offload the processing to something in the back or whatever. Like they'll figure out that kind of stuff. Really, it's the fidelity, and the fidelity is already there. Screen technology is already there. So now they have to figure out how all that fits in together holistically and be able to, what you're hearing is that you basically have like the new Apple VR AR sets are like having a laptop on your face. Like, what does that even mean? Yeah. So next year is going to be interesting, and the year after is going to be really interesting for that new wave of things. On top of that, well, right now, everything is down,
Right.
but like crypto is like, what is Bitcoin at right now? Like 20,000?
Yeah.
19 or 20,000. That's
Uh-huh.
insane. That's
Okay.
it's really low. It's not quite as low as it was in the beginning of the pandemic, which it probably will get there. Who knows?
Mhm.
It probably will get there, and then when it retraces back up,
Yeah. 19.
yeah, 19 now.
133.
I could see it going to 10, and then it'll probably even out, and then it'll shoot up. But that's once crypto gets to that point where they figured it out,
Right.
and the governments have all figured it out, and however all the institutions have all figured it out. Then we're going to start to see the mass adoption, and it'll be like overnight. You'll start to probably see like all these things. Suddenly, all these companies are going to start popping up, and they already have it on blockchain, and everything is already ready to go. And you're like, where did all this come from?
Right.
It's all being worked on right now. This is the engines that are all getting built right now. This is why I think like the hope of that decentralization is going to come through. It's funny we have our outline for the notes, and I'm like no. We just basically I was like, oh, I'll just leave it.
Yeah.
But I'm a huge proponent, huge fan, and very optimistic about that decentralized future. And I think that part of it is just like we've never, every time we get into more technology, you start to see more freedom happen.
Right.
I feel like the internet is a great example of that.
Mhm.
So it's tumultuous, it's weird, it's crazy, it's great, it's bad, it's everything.
Mhm.
And before, like having lived before the internet, you wouldn't have been able to dream of what the internet was going to be,
Right.
right? You remember how like everybody just like, oh, you're gonna go surf the internet and jump on like the information super highway, like it was so clunky,
Right.
Because we were so single-minded and saying like this was only going to be a resource of being able to. It's like our library, but it's online. Like that's where we were. Images came like like blocks
Yeah.
of
Pictures and words,
Yeah.
and that's it.
yeah.
Yeah, and chat rooms.
Chat rooms.
Age, sex, location. Anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and that's how you met people. And like,
Yeah.
who would have thought that that's how you were engaging with somebody, and then somebody you don't even see.
Yeah.
You're like, you just have an idea of who this person might be, and if you're getting catfished, but
You have no idea.
I mean, but if you're even
happens.
talking about conversations about your love for stuff, you're sharing an experience with somebody you never met,
Right.
Yeah.
which it's an interesting thing, like a pen pal almost.
Well, and try to see where that goes.
Yeah.
Where does that go from here? Do we go? We're not going to regress.
Mhm.
We're going to go into what's the next step of that,
Right.
and that's going to be immersion,
Mm.
like feel like you're present
Yeah.
in that space, and that's going to change a lot of things for people. That's going to make things happen where you're going to probably slow down before you post something online.
Yeah.
Because everything then can get tied back to you. Everybody should have a verified check mark.
Uh-huh. Oh, on their Twitter.
Think about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What happens when that happens?
Everybody knows who you are. Yeah. And I think that needs to be done. I don't know why they haven't even implemented in some,
Yeah,
especially since Google owns YouTube and Facebook and this is-
Exactly.
instead of people having their fake names, why don't you just let them be? And
Yep.
I understand the lore of anonymity,
hmm
but I don't know.
Well, yeah, there's privacy and there's anonymity that needs to happen, and
Yeah.
sure, like all those things. But like, and that I think that's where you can definitely have that figured out. Like privacy issues are a big thing, and does that get sold off to some company? Like all your information and your data, and what does
Yeah.
that actually mean? Most people seem like they don't care. Like whatever, I'm gonna do the thing.
Yeah.
Yes, but now if you're going to be a participant in a community, then there's a responsibility that you're going to have like everybody else. So you want to have that protected,
Right.
and you also want to be part of that community. So that's where we're all figuring out right now, which is why everything seems so just absolutely insane, which it is.
Mhm.
But that winds up, I think it will wind up going to a better place where we will have it figured out. We'll get there, and then people will the generation of kids that are growing up, like this is a good example of like generation of kids that are growing up playing like Roblox and things like that online, and that's how they're talking to their friends. They're not hanging out on Facebook like like trolling on each other
Yeah.
because no, they're like experiencing things with each other. They're hanging out. They're like that's why like Roblox is so huge. Minecraft is huge. Like Fortnite and stuff like that. Those
Okay.
shared community game experiences are massive. Billion-dollar industries.
Uh-huh.
There was one called Axie Infinity that was for the crypto space. So there's like you can. It's basically taking the. It kind of looks like it has some like Pokemon type of like monster collecting, types of things, but you're actually mining crypto.
Okay.
So you can actually buy Axie Infinity coins and things like that, and then you can mine them in this space, and so that's kind of interesting. And right now everything like it's hard to go like, well, where's it going to be? But like in this market, this is where like everything like tightens down before it like explodes, which is what is going to happen. You're going to start seeing more gaming stuff. Like there's an engine coin, and that basically is like trying to be a technology that will help all of these social gaming experiences tie in together. And what does it look like when you are part of a community, part of a game, and you're also a financial participant in it in a certain way? Steam actually, in a very like low level way, Steam is doing this, where if you're playing a certain game and you get a certain achievement, it gives you cards, and those cards may only be worth like 2 cents, 5 cents, 15 cents. If it's a really good achievement that you did, maybe worth $1. But you can sell those. You can trade those online.
Well, this sounds like Ready Player One.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of things like that.
I mean, do you think we'll get to that point, or will people have their avatars and be able to even work in this space and get money and?
Yeah, well, we're already. How's the? Still going?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, we're. Yeah, I think. I think that like. So Ready Player One's interesting because because it's a movie and a book and whatever. There is the different versions of like dystopia, and also utopia online, right? There's the dystopia in real life versus the utopia online. And that's great for storytelling, yes.
Right.
And there's probably going to be a version of that. There's no single thing that the world is that reality. Reality is not that simple.
Right.
So I think what we're going to wind up seeing is that there's no utopia online. Like you can't say the internet is a utopia, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's not a dystopia.
Yeah.
It just is. Like it is
like
another.
Earth, there's good and bad.
Yeah, it's like
And
there's
neutral.
there's a whole like range of things, and it's a whole world. So
and there's a world underneath the world because there's the whole like Pirate Bay and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like people we don't even see.
Yeah.
Like there's different.
Oh yeah, like there's the dark web and all that kind of stuff. Sure. Yeah, there's dark pockets. Then there's mainstream things like being able to order something on Amazon and go like, cool, I don't have to go out and get it, and it's cheaper. So, it's a lifestyle. And because of the internet and because of our phones, we're constantly on our phones. See, look at him.
Yeah.
Constantly on our phones.
Right.
So what does that mean going forward? It means that how do we go away from disengagement to engagement and still do that? Now, it's going to take a brain shift, and it'll probably take some actual technology like glasses and some type of brain interface so that we can engage in reality. It's like reality plus. And the experiences of VR are those getaways. Those are our arcades. Those are our movie theaters. Those are all those things. I mean, that's where I see it going. And what does that mean for reality? Well, it's like the reality will change. Maybe malls will become something else. Maybe you'll have QR codes that will. Have you played the game Watch Dogs?
Not yet.
Oh,
okay.
There's an interesting thing in Watch Dogs where you can actually, like, as you're going to do your thing, you can play these AR games in it that give you those experiences because you're tapping into. Yeah. So it's cool, but I feel like there's going to be like AR parks.
Okay.
Right. So just like look at Pokemon Go is a great example. How many, remember when Pokemon Go was a big thing? Everybody went out with their phones and
it was right when the pandemic happened and like people didn't work, so I'd be walking at night, exercising. There'd be groups of like 20 people who didn't know each other, who are all just like trying to catch the same.
I guess it did have like a resurgence because I think it originally
happened before
like 2015, 2016 it came out.
Yeah,
and it was like everybody, and then I think it was like another wave during the beginning of the pandemic, which was funny.
But speaking of games, you know what? My buddy Adam and Barbie introduced me to Detroit
Become Human.
Is that the one where you have you play 3 different characters and you kind of like, yeah. That was a fun game. It's almost
very
like
cinematic
a choose your own adventure style.
Yeah.
Because like we want to complete the game and then we all want to switch characters.
Yeah.
We just hand off the controller. Okay, I'm this character.
Yeah.
You play this character and you play this character story.
Yeah, there's I think the makers of like Until Dawn. There's some horror ones. Actually, I have them. We should probably try it later.
Okay.
But it's the same thing where we can have a controller and we play through this experience. There's one like The Exorcist. Actually, that's a really cool one.
Well, if it's like The Exorcist, I want to play this because
Yeah.
being religion major, I'm like,
Yeah.
let's see if I can get this demon.
Well, what's cool is that it actually starts off in ancient.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'll leave
Okay.
it at that.
Okay.
So the story's cool, and I haven't played past that because I was like, oh man, we should do this like as a group kind of
Yeah,
thing or
no.
whatever. We could do it on the big screen maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, so sorry. Speaking of video games and like what the progression of technology, but also what's old is new is old is new again. I started playing, and I'll probably start streaming next week. The new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge.
Nice.
It is the best thing ever.
What?
But it is weird because you went from like you went from the arcade where you had I think max 2-player for the old Turtle arcade games. So like,
What if we played on that with the joysticks?
maybe
like
we could.
arcade
But,
sticks?
I'll eventually get it for Steam when the Steam Deck arrives. But I got it for a Switch just because I had it, and you can play up to 6 players co-op like arcade style.
Nice.
But they can all drop in
Yeah.
with your Switches. I
Love
think
it.
online and local. That's so cool. But that game is made with love. Like
Nice.
all the weird sub characters that have
Yeah.
like one episode of the TV show they're
Uh-huh.
even in it. It's really well put together. And I feel like a lot of games that like just lean on nostalgia never quite deliver. This one, I guess, the perfect balance of the stuff you remember, but like quality of life upgrades and like just a little bit more stuff going on than just the standard gameplay that the Turtles in Time had. But
Nice.
it's so good.
So have you heard? You know what the Steam Deck is?
No. I
Oh,
don't.
dude. So I'm actually getting mine tomorrow. Apparently.
Okay.
Super stoked. Valve came up with their version of a mobile, portable, PC-based gaming system, but
Okay.
it's a computer, but it's basically like a Switch but bigger.
Okay.
And it has all the features that and it has a custom processor that runs it all and all that. So we both ordered it, and actually Sarah also we ordered it that morning when it went online, and I'm just now getting it.
Wow.
So this is Q2. And I got the 512 gig version, which is like it's the slowest one that's moving right now. You should be getting yours next month probably. Yeah, most likely next month. So we're waiting on these things, and it's a great because we're like, oh my gosh, finally I got to order. And you get like 3 days once you get like, hey, you're available to order and place your order. And there's a whole community online, Reddit and like Facebook groups, and we're all like, everybody's figuring out how to use these things in ways that like they're putting Windows on and they're putting their own games on. Some people have hooked up graphics tablets and use it as like content creation because a computer. But it's also a computer with love because it's a gaming system and you want to take it everywhere with you and play, but also you can work on it. You can plug in stuff and put it on your screen, and it's adaptable to all those things. This is what's cool. And this is going to wind up like taking the mobile gaming part of it and making it more of just like gaming, just wherever you are, and socializing the gaming experience. Like I was watching Sarah play we'll say the new God of War, but the latest God of War, the fourth one, that was only on PS4 and then PS5 and then like the PC.
That's the one with the sun.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's playing that on mobile, and it's great.
Wow.
And you're looking at that going like, this shouldn't, like right now, like the technology is there now to have it, but it looks beautiful. So that's an interesting, just iterative step that I think 100% everybody is clamoring for in that experience. And it's, gangbusters. Like everybody is like waiting for this thing. And then it's going to allow more games to be made. More indies are going to want to get in the game and start making things because this love of this new system and these new systems. There's different. Aya Neo is another one, and they have Android versions. Like mobile games have like made an interesting comeback in different ways. Like there's the new like Nintendo Watch games. Like you can buy those at Target now, and like people can like buy those little systems and. You can mod other little systems, and my friend has this tiny, and I forget what it's called, but it's literally this big, and it's like a little mini Game Boy thing, and you can literally play like on it, that tiny. Would you want to? Maybe not, but it's like on your keychain.
Gotcha.
So that's an interesting culture of bringing the gaming experience together. Now, there's so much development that's happening on gaming, the gaming side of things. What's happening on the movie side of things? This is like, I'll just keep coming right back to it, where it's like when we start getting the ability to want to create more stories, and they don't have to all be 1.5 hour experiences. They can be 5 minute, 10 minute, 1 minute, whatever.
Yeah.
And everybody starts creating more of that. Like YouTube is really the only place people are going to get that type of content, right? But it's not really that type of content. We're seeing that, but it's so much of other things. But it's centralized as well.
Right.
So we're going to get to that point, I feel like, where we're going to start seeing all those variances of little micro studio types of things where people can make their own stuff. It goes online, it becomes an NFT, and then that way the community that supports it also benefits financially, but they're also supporting the content creators, and content creators are going to support other content creators,
Right.
and it's going to be a back and forth thing. That's where we're going to see the movie, TV, whatever. We're calling it movies and TV. What's really the difference? You think about it. Are we calling movies because we know movies are 1.5 to 2 hours? I know are we just now? Is it just the block of time?
David Lynch calls Twin Peaks: The Return an 8-hour movie.
Yeah.
Or 14-hour, 18-hour
Right.
movie, whatever long episodes that is.
Yeah. Like Stranger Things. That's essentially like a 10-hour, 12-hour movie.
Well, you think that TV shows are different from movies is because TV shows have characters, and then you keep putting them in different situations?
Well, that's a formula. That's episodic.
Yeah.
Right. So there's different things, right? I don't know if you watched Love, Death, and Robots.
No, not yet.
Oh, so good.
Okay.
You need to see it. We should watch a couple episodes.
Okay.
What's interesting is that that's an anthology.
Right.
So you have, you've got books that do the same thing, right? Short stories, a book of short stories that are all themed to something. And this one is like Love, Death, and Robots. So it's like, it's animation that can be very, very, like you have do whatever you want kind of thing. So and it's all, people can make it violent. They can make it whatever they want. Some unbelievably amazing visual experiences that you're seeing in these, and the stories just can go. This is true sci-fi.
Okay.
Like if you really think about it, what is science fiction? In science fiction is that ability to tell some type of a human story, you hope, but with massive ideas about the universe. That's the idea of science fiction, right? You're and then there's hard sci-fi and fantasy and all the variances, but that's what you're trying to do. So this is the best form of telling those things because you're being able to literally do all those things. Can you humanize a story? And if you do it through animation, that animation could essentially pass as real. And then you're kind of like starting to hit into those like ideas of what is real in these things. You'll have to see it.
Okay. Yeah.
And you'll see what I mean. But there's a lot of growth in that space in a major way that is really, really exciting. And there's a gamified level of that where there's QR codes that you can like scan.
Okay.
And you scan it, and it gives you to an NFT, like that you can get. I'll show you one that I didn't buy it yet, but I was like, oh, I have to like see this because now this is the thing.
Okay, I'm going to admit something. I'm kind of late to the part. I don't even know what an NFT is.
So this is an NFT. So this is, oh my gosh, we have to watch this episode.
Okay, but I mean, what's the difference between you taking a screenshot and saving that on your phone as opposed to?
It's not that. It's not about that. You can say download it or you can mint it. There's two options. If you download it, it's free.
Right.
You mint it, then what you're doing is you're basically creating a piece of art that is now incentivized financially. Yep, and serialized, and it's now you now own it. But you can own it by just downloading it.
Right. So I don't get the difference.
Minting it adds all of that backbone that says this is the official thing that you get. Here's a good example.
I was to say, let's say in real life you have a painting. You go, I'm gonna sell this painting, and someone goes, okay, well, what is it? And you can tell them whatever you want about it. If you have, I know they do it like Pokemon cards, and I know art collectors do it too. They have like, oh, this art house says like this is a actual Monet. Having that art house back it and say this is legit, this is real, and obviously there's scams and all sorts of stuff. But typically you can say like, oh, we can trust this thing. there's an added layer of trust and like the vintage and the heritage or whatever. I feel like it's kind of like that, where it's like instead of just like, oh my god, the painting. I'm like, well, I like the painting. It adds more than just the painting. It's, oh, that was painted by so and so, and there's a history to it, and there's a validity to it beyond just I'm an artist and I made this. It's which the one isn't like better or worse. It's just like, well, what do you want? Do you want just a painting that some local artist made? That's cool. Or do you want a Monet? It depends on what you're looking for.
I guess my question is because like a painting you can you can physically hold.
Yeah.
This thing that is on the internet.
Well, okay, you can. What is a domain name that you own, right? Or you could say digital property. I think to say something that's physical versus digital is one argument.
Web store?
Yeah. What is anything that you own online? Like you can say a company.
But some of them...
is that an asset? That's like a thing that you're providing a service, and like yes, you can track that. So digital property is interesting because there's no going back unless we completely get rid of electricity and the internet and computers, which we're not. So we're only going to go forward. So as to you basically has to be the baseline. Is like, look, computers exist. The internet exists. Let's move on from that. Where do we go from that? Now, where do we go from that is we go, well, there's the Ready Player One of like buying digital clothes and stuff like that. That's sure. But what's the real value add? And the real value add is that if I'm going to be a content creator in this space, then I go, oh, well, I'm going to basically go, I need to, how do I monetize in this thing? How do I create, if I create an image and I want to sell it so that other people want to have and own a part of that image, then you've created a community. And you're not going, I'm going to create an image that is for this company, then they're going to sell it for me, or a piece of music, or a movie, or a game, or anything like that. So, anyways, lots of other conversations to have with it. The girls are back from swimming, so maybe we should wrap this thing up.
Yeah. No, but yeah,
I could talk about NFTs and stuff like that for hours.
I mean,
we totally can.
I'm really late to the party in a lot of things because you're talking about gaming. And especially like cell phone gaming. I just downloaded Candy Crush. Like I'm way late.
Oh yeah, you were definitely way late to the party.
Yeah,
that's okay.
No, but
there's no early or late.
I know, but I'm the guy that always is late to the party for some stuff, except movies. I'm way ahead of the curve in TV shows and movies more than TV shows than my friends. But like. I'm just like, I'm playing Candy Crush right now, and I'm like, man, this is amazing. Why didn't I discover this game like 5 years ago?
That's hilarious. But there's lots of conversations around the mobile gaming space that I think are really, really cool, especially when it comes to like some type of like ARG experience. Like there's lots of, and there's some interesting case studies of things that have done right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's an actually really interesting way of form of storytelling as well as like the ARG experience. Yeah, well, I'll have to show you some of those. But NFTs, this is an ongoing conversation for sure.
Yeah.
And I think like to get your head into it we're all figuring it out. Everybody's like trying to, but there's a possibility of being able to be part of something that is new and exciting. That's one part of it. But on top of that, it's really being part of a movement that is great for everybody. I don't know what I don't know of a bad thing that NFTs are for that anybody can make the example of saying, well, this won't work. Like, why won't it work? Like, we could start with those conversations, and maybe that's something to think about. I would love to have those conversations where people are going, well, NFTs, this is just a bunch of like vaporware. You can't really say that. You can say you could say that about the internet. You could say that about anything that's new. But when you have a massive movement behind it, with people that are creating real technology and real infrastructure that is backing this thing of blockchain and security, it's going to change everything online. And it will also make everybody accountable. It will also take away a lot of the ethereal things that we don't trust. It does a lot of things. Like I said, that's a much longer conversation I think that we can have. And especially in the NFT space, as a content creator, gold. Like, that is your gold, because you do not have to, potentially, you don't have to sell your thing to the bigger thing and let them handle all of your administration.
Patreon.
Patreon's a great example, yeah. How did Patreon come out?
Yeah.
Like, and a funny thing,
I mean,
OnlyFans,
effectively, NFTs could replace it.
yeah,
be like,
OnlyFans
oh.
has a bad name, but OnlyFans is another version of Patreon. OnlyFans is trying to be Patreon. They just came out during COVID and a lot of other seedy stuff, and I'll say seedy, but it allowed people to create their own channels, whatever those channels may be.
And John, how many of those channels are you subscribed
Oh
to?
yeah, John, how many?
Sex work is valid work.
Yes, exactly. But that's what it is, right? Patreon, and those types of things that is an inch forward in allowing people to self-distribute, self-publish, whatever it is.
I get you now.
NFTs now that's the thing where you're like, yeah, it has to be an NFT. There's no, why wouldn't you make it an NFT is really the thing. Especially all of our phones and our glasses or whatever in the future are going to be linked to some type of digital wallet. That digital wallet is going to basically account for all of those investments that you're going to have. The stock market, if you think about the stock market, imagine investing in content as your stock. That's another way to look at it. Right? So if I were to say there is this really hot director and they're going to blow up in like 3 years and whatever, you're like, yep, I'm kickstarting it.
Ah, okay.
Now, kickstarting it, they give you incentives. They're like, hey, if you're part of this Kickstarter, then we'll do some extra things. You'll get it on cheaper. We just no, whatever.
Maybe make you an executive producer at a certain level, like that type of
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what happens if you own now that piece of property that is like, hey, this is the thing, and you're like, okay, well, maybe down the line I want to sell it. And there's another super fan that's like, man, I know they only made like a certain amount and I missed out on it, but somebody's selling theirs. And then they buy yours.
Right.
The original creator gets a portion of that royalty every time it changes hands. So that's part of the technology that goes into it.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's cool stuff.
Yeah.
It's super cool stuff. So, well, this is great. We did an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Your kiddos in the background.
Yeah.
All right. Well, till next time. Thank you for being part of our first podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me on.
We'll have to do this again.
Yeah.
We'll have to part 2 it because I didn't even get through any of my.
We'll talk about a Steam Deck.
my outline. We could talk about the Steam Deck next time when I actually have it.
Always get high and then in a couple hours do this all again.
There you go.
Episode 2.
Episode 2. Yeah. All right. Thanks, y'all.
Yeah.